Another relativist ethical theory is called emotivism, and it's a really interesting theory to think about. All right, the emotivist says this, that when you make moral claims, when you say that a particular action is morally permissible or morally prohibited, that a person is a good person or a bad person, the emotivist is going to say, you're not talking about anything that's cognitive, because morality is non-cognitive. When you make moral claims, what you're really making statements about are your feelings, your emotions, your particular preferences. The feeling that a particular action stirs in you is what determines whether that action was a moral one or an immoral one. So when you say something like, I think killing innocent people is immoral, the emotivist is going to say, all you're really saying with that is like, ew, yuck, I don't like murder. Okay? And on the flip side, when somebody comes out of that burning building carrying the child and you're like, oh my gosh, you're such a brave, good person, what a hero you are, the emotivist is going to say, well, all you're really saying is like, yay, you. Okay? So for the emotivist, morality is non-cognitive. And it's something that's non-cognitive. It's not really productive to even talk much about it, right? It would be sort of like getting into an argument with someone about whether or not vanilla or chocolate ice cream tastes better, right? It's the individual preference that determines whether or not something tastes better or not. And similarly for the emotivist, it's the individual feeling that causes an action to be considered moral or immoral. Okay, so we can apply emotivism to our structure here, and we'll see here that unlike subjectivism that put individual belief in that foundation, individual belief was what mattered the most, and that's cognitive, emotivism situates individual feelings and emotions as the things that matter most, okay, and those are non-cognitive things. So when the emotivist makes a moral claim and they say, I don't think it's moral to steal people from others, and we say, well, why do you feel that way? They say like, well, because I just don't like the way that feels. I just don't like it, okay? So we might apply this theory to our Cookie Monster girls and come up with an argument that looks kind of like this. Actions that produce positive emotions in me, like joy and inspiration, are moral actions, and actions that produce negative emotions in me, like anger or guilt, are immoral actions. Morally wrong actions should be condemned and sometimes punished. The dumbest girl stealing the stealing the money from the girl selling Girl Scout cookies produces negative emotions in me. Therefore, what the dumbest girls did was morally wrong, and they should be punished. Now, of course, if all of these premise statements are true, the conclusion does in fact follow. So when we go back and we look at these premises, the first truths seem highly suspect, right? Actions that produce positive emotion in me are moral actions. Well, what if harming people produces positive emotions in me? What if harming small animals for joy produces positive emotions in me? And what about the second premise? Is it really the case that actions that produce negative emotions in me are immoral actions? Is that essentially saying that anything that makes me feel guilty is an immoral action? Because I don't like the experience of guilt. That's a negative emotion. Anything that produces guilt in me is necessarily an immoral action. In other words, it's not possible for a person to feel guilty about things they shouldn't feel guilty about. Okay? So emotivism is going to be, I say it's an interesting theory because of this. We're all emotivists to some degree, right? You all have this feeling about the rightness or wrongness of some kind of action. You might not even be able to trace that feeling back to anything cognitive. It just feels like the right thing to do, or it feels like the wrong thing to do. Okay? So emotivism has this attractive quality of seeming to resonate with how we make a lot of the moral decisions that we do. But you can see it's a really sketchy kind of ethical framework because feelings are so unreliable. And there doesn't appear to be any inherent correlation between the feelings we experience and the actions that we witness. It seems like our feelings are something that develop over time. And they might not develop in the ways that we would want them to in order for them to be reliable indicators of moral and immoral actions. And again, of course, you can see we go back to our desert island problem. Well, what if we're all emotivists? Some people feel like killing this person would be the right thing to do. Other people feel like killing this person would be the wrong thing to do. How do you resolve this? Like, how do you argue about what you feel? You just feel that. Right? And you can't argue that your feeling is wrong because feelings are not wrong or right. They just kind of are. Okay? Now, they might not be the feelings that we think are an appropriate response to a given situation, but that's going to take us into a cognitive discussion, right? That's going to take us into a discussion of the facts and what the facts mean, and then hopefully our emotional system sort of regulates to accommodate those facts more effectively, okay? So there is emotivism.